What's up, Shred Sexies? Welcome back. Death to the Fingers. All right, let's get into this drum stuff. And listen, I just want to plow through this because this is some technical information, but I'm realizing if I don't give it to you, then your drums are going to sound terrible. You'll be like, well, this isn't fun. If the drums sound wimpy or they're weak or they suck or whatever it is, it's just, it kind of robs you of the enjoyment of doing this. So I'm just going to go over this stuff right now. First thing is, it's on your 2-bus. You're probably going to want these 3 sort of basic effects, if you will, this compressor. Now listen, I like to do everything here on the 2-bus in mid-side mode. So unlink the channels and do it in mid-side. This one's amazing, but you do you. Then you've got the SPL PQ. This is just an EQ. Okay, so I'm taking this really awesomely compressed signal and I'm adding a bit of sweetness to it, you know, just really juicing up the best frequency ranges. And at the very end here, I just sort of roll off the low end and the high end just to keep it real, and just a tiny bit more of sweetening. Obviously, look at that 0.25 dB here at 130 hertz, no big deal, right? And another one here around 5,000, probably, yeah, 4274 in this case. But again, it's just this tiny, and of course adjusting the Q just to get it the perfect amount of just high-end juiciness, right? So this is my preferred sort of sequence on the 2-bus, which is the compressor into an EQ. And this last one is just me basically trying to control the last little bits of, you know, where you start adding a ton of high end like this, like I do. Look at me just absolutely go nuts here with 24K. And again, here at about more 24K, I had to roll off on the top end there a little bit to keep it from taking my face off, right? So that was an essential, and that right there kind of explains something. Is on one sort of plug in like this one, the high end's really sweet, right? Like it'll be able to do a better job than if I do a high shelf in terms of an EQ here. So I'm just going to rail this one and control it using the EQ as the final stage, and that makes it sound way better. In my opinion only, of course, right? So once you get your 2-bus set up, what you want to do is now break up your drum template into like a couple regions. This one down here that you see grayed out, I'm going to ungray them now, and they're muted here. We'll turn this all on. This is just the working tracks, right? So this is where my VST instrument resides, in this case, Superior 3. I use Superior 3 because, quite frankly, just notice from the grooves here, I have so many, and they have so many themselves, right? And if you look at the drums here, just the sheer number of kits, right, is just insane, okay? And they're mixed by the best mixers in the world. And the level of control, which, of course, I never even really mess with. I'm going to show you how I do it here. But you really don't need to. I don't think I've ever actually done anything in the mixer, ever, right? So I don't do anything. Actually, I don't use the tracker. I don't build them here. I actually just go to the groove section, and I'll show you that I just essentially grab the groove that I want and I drag it onto the grid here, right? So say, for example, I want to start off, okay, we'll do an alt rock thing. I want to do straight 4/4 time. We'll do it at 75 beats per minute, even though I'm set for 100. But I'm like, okay, this is the tempo I want. You don't have to really pay attention to what these are. If you want to go faster or slower, do it. If you want to have a really fast thing and then slow it way down, that can be really cool sometimes. But you're like, okay, I want to start off with the intro, right? So you might zoom in on your project here to a certain degree. Okay, be like, okay, look, there's the second bar. So I give myself a 4 count with the metronome to get in. And I'm really into intro 3, so I'm just going to take intro 3 here and drop it on the grid like that. And that's it, really. And then what I'm going to do is select this region like this. Okay, here I'm kind of messing it up because of the snap on my mouse. And then, of course, what I'm going to do is just start to add this region here. Okay, and then I can edit the region by typing in intro here in the word range, right? So now I've carved out this one particular region. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, the intro, it's a little boring there, so I want to add a fill. So I'm like, okay, I'll do fill 3. So you come over here to fill 3, and I'm just going to, you know, add it to one of the tracks above it here. It kind of got mixed up. I'll put it on the one below it. And that way I can just now start to line these two things up. Just grab this one MIDI track and pull it back, of course, and take this one and just line it up. And now I have the intro going into a fill. okay, which sets me up now to go to the verse. I'm like, I want verse 3. That's the one. That's my jam. So I drag it on there. There's verse 3. And you're like, I want to do verse 5 too. So that's the one. And these are all just slight variations. You're like, I need a fill. So you put your section here in the middle. You're like, go down to fill. You're like, fill 11's really working for me. So you're going to put that there. Of course, zoom in. I'm just going to zip over here, grab your MIDI track here. I like to do it the last 4 bars of the previous one, but you do you, obviously dragging it into place. And you're like, okay, oops, I'm good to go. You might want to do it again here at the end kind of thing. You know, I'm sure you guys are, I'm used to doing it like this, but you know what I mean? It would really help if I had a computer that, or an extra screen kind of deal. But there it is. I just added the last fill in. And then of course I can just sort of sit here. I can take my, my little drum window here and just get rid of it. And just take this and drag it over here, right? And of course, add another region. And now I want to go up and edit this region. So I'm like, first thing I want to do is set the color. I want to use high contrast. So I'm going to have all the verses as yellow. And then in the name here, I'll just go verse 1, right? And then of course, where there's verse 2, I'll have another yellow region. I'll say verse 2. And I can take, and if I want to, just select all of these drum tracks here. I'm like, I just really want to copy and paste it, right? So I can just basically hold down, let's see, it's the control key in my case, and just click and drag it. And there it is, right? So that's incredibly useful if you're like, well, I'm just writing a pop song, and then just delete these 2 fills and put 2 different fills in there, and nobody's going to know the difference, like quite literally. So that can be a huge benefit to you. But notice how I'm sort of constructively just moving along, building the track. I add in the regions. I might be like, okay, there's another one here. This is going to be whatever. Oops, the pre-chorus, right? And then I've got another region in here. Oh, that's going to be the chorus. Okay, and I just keep building it with respect to the drums. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go up to the pre-chorus here. Oh, number 2, drag it on there. Oh, I got to go to the chorus. I want chorus 3 and chorus 5 done. Okay, you put them all together on this grid, and eventually you're left with this big string here, if you will, of this MIDI information. Okay, and the thing is I like to do this because now I can just go directly to the MIDI information and manipulate it as I need to, right? Like if I want to select everything, I can just right click it, right? And then I can adjust the volume as necessary, going up or down kind of situation like that. Or I can, you know, be like, listen to the various instruments and be like, what is this sort of going on? In this case, that's a crash or whatever. I don't know if you guys can hear that. Probably not. But you see what I'm getting at here? I can adjust the velocities and all the rest of that stuff. If I just want to adjust a few of the track parameters, like this one here, then I can do that. This gives me total control. There's more benefits here. You'll notice at the top here, in terms of the Reaper stuff, I can mute out sections as necessary. I can add effects directly to it. Now, if I don't want them just basically on here, I can add the effect directly to this. And that can be pretty useful sometimes. Now, in this case, it's velocity, but I bet you anything, you could also adjust this for volume. Usually when you record like actual audio, this is volume, so you can actually adjust the volume. So again, you have total control over the mix. If I want to all of a sudden go like, well, 100 beats is no longer good for me. I want to go up to 120 or 129 beats, right? And I hit enter kind of situation. Well, you didn't really see anything, but the fact of the matter is this entire template just contracted. If I did, you know, let it out and then did it back in again, you'll see it readjust, right? When it's 129 beats per minute, it compresses because everything. Now, if you did that with audio tracks, it would just completely mess everything up. But with the MIDI information, you can just speed up and slow down as necessary, right? So again, doing it like this to build your song first and then make various manipulations as necessary with the tempo is way better for you, right? You can build it up first and then just mess with the tempo as necessary. Now, this time signature here, that's going to correspond, of course, with the time signature that you're using. Obviously, if you're doing 6/8 here, you're going to want this time signature down here to say 6/8, right? So just hit 6/8. Now, if you have 6/8 and then all of a sudden start layering 4/4 beats over it, it'll just put a 6/8 metronome over top of 4/4 beats, and it can be kind of weird. You'll know right away. So, you know, just beware of that kind of situation. But that's where this beat sort of situation comes into play. You're going to just sync it up with whatever it is. And I have some ones that are absolutely insane. Let's see, like this Metal Fusion or Fusion one, 7/4, like 6/4. You can get some really, really out there ones, especially when I'm getting into this progressive metal stuff. There's some really weird ones in there that without the metronome and stuff would just absolutely throw you for a loop because they're so weird. That's the best way I can say it. One of my favorite drum tracks is amazing. Progressive metal. Holy smokes, there's so much stuff to work in there, and they're all great. Right, so that kind of basically covers just the building of the drum track. What I'm going to do afterwards is you can glue it all together by selecting it, you know, and you can make one full MIDI file out of it if that's what you want to do. I'm not going to do that, of course. Or what I do is right-click on it, and then I just render them out, okay, in stereo. Now, listen, I usually hit just F3 because I have it set to a hotkey, and that's going to give me an audio file that I'm going to drag up to this channel here. Which is basically this information, this raw information now being contained here where I'm going to start doing more editing. Okay, so this stage here of the building of the drums is just me actually building the drum track with the intro and the fills and everything else. And I'm going to select my drum kit. You know, in this case, it's this metal gent one, whatever. I might be doing something else. So you're like, oh, okay, I want to use the indie dry, or oh look, I need a blues one, so 1969 or 1960 mono or whatever it is. It really depends, or you might just start going through it, develop the entire drum sound, which I would do first, basically come up with the actual drum pattern, and then start messing with the drums, the sound itself at the very end. Just be like, okay, what's this going to sound like under Rumi, and just start going through each one of these. Because if you start messing with a loop and just start messing with the drums, you'll get bored almost instantly and not get anything done. At least if you get the MIDI information done, then you're good to go. But you see what I mean? Like, again, that's one of those classic put the cart before the horse type situations where you're messing around with the sounds before you're actually sort of just getting the meat and potatoes done, which is just build the MIDI information for what the drums are going to sound like. Man, I can't get these things out here today. What's up? So that's a huge one, right? Of course. And so that means I spend like a huge majority of my time right here just on the groove section, building this up and whatnot. And of course, I kind of shrink this down to something more reasonable once I get enough, and I can just kind of drop them in there. Now, I'm a lot more comfortable with this stuff. I know it looks weird when I have to pull it off the screen like this, but I've just been doing it for so long now that it just makes sense to me. I don't really need to see any of this stuff over here because I don't care, right? Oh, man, I hate that function of Windows. After this, I'm going to take it off finally after a year or 2 years or whatever it is. After that, of course, I'm outputting that information all the way up here. And, of course, I'm going to turn off these tracks because I don't need them anymore. The other benefit here is, of course, is I'm going to mute these. Of course, I'm going to turn it off just to save some processing power, and I'm going to turn it off like that, right? But the other thing is if you make some sort of catastrophic mistake, you can always go back down here and just render the drum track out again and just get a pristine carbon copy of what you had before, right? So that's obviously a huge time saver. When it comes up here, I'm focusing the drums using dynamics. I'm doing some filtration. I'm doing some compression. I'm doing gating. And I'm using this preamp section. You might be noticing here, I don't even have the EQ on because it's not. Okay, I'm not doing any EQ here. I'm just doing some basically tightening up the mechanics of this already killer drum sound by running it through this SSL 4000G channel strip. From there, I'm going down to this next section here called Drums Compressor. Okay, and this one, basically all I'm doing is I have 4 different compressors that I run in parallel. So that one drum channel there, this one up here, now runs down to each one of these compressors where I'm doing this compressor, where of course I'm messing with the high and low frequencies and compressing them in different sort of ratios. I have this 1176, that's a famous one, obviously. This one's really cool from Neeld. I don't know what it is about it. It just sounds absolutely amazing on drums. The U2A, I basically think this is a 2A. sort of knockoff, but it's got all this extra functionality that's really awesome. It's got the mojo. It's my favorite of the 2As. And this one here, the quad, which is basically a very famous sort of 70s, 80s piece of gear, was on a million hits. So usually this ends up on the 2-bus, but that new Elysia Alpha one is just so damn good that this has now been moved to the drum bus. Mint, and I'm doing this brow rising, obviously just blending in a little bit of each one of these compressors as necessary into this main channel. Yes, I'm rolling off the low end here just to control that. And I blend that in with this other channel. Boom, that's next part of my drums is down here. I'm just doing saturation of the mid side. Turn off the channel link, put it in mid side, right? And then I just basically affect the mids and the side differently. And I think you'll find that that sounds absolutely killer. You don't have to do this stuff. And of course, I'm saturating basically the mids and sides, and it gives it like a top end boost. But this is a killer piece of software, but honestly, I only use it in this one capacity, although you could use it in so many more. It's very versatile, but this is my favorite application for it right now. Once I do that, I do the exact same thing I just did, which is just basically select these main tracks now. I right click and I render them out into stereo. And once I get that audio signal, I'm going to bring it up here. Whoops. And they go right here. And this is the final chain. Here, I'm doing the saturation trick. We've talked about that from the tips and tricks video. I do it on every single one. There's the saturation there. If I open this one, there it is again, right? I'm always doing it. This is one of the most important. And look I'm not even touching anything. I don't even actually adjust anything except for this channel here. Everything's at 0. So the difference is, of course, is I manipulate this channel and I send it down here, but when I do, I manipulate the volume going in. So going into this effect here, the actual information from this channel is at minus 16 dB going into this. And of course, now you see me doing more gain staging, just railing the makeup. I'm sweetening the low end here. I'm sweetening the high end. This is a great plug-in for drums. My favorite, honestly, for low and high end beefing up. This thing is just absolutely monstrous. It's great. And of course I have this sub synth, which, you know, sort of does the same thing, but in a different way. I've got it slaved essentially to the bass guitar. So when the bass and the kick hit at the same time, this kicks in and basically limits this sub synth being applied to the entire drum track. So it is what it is kind of situation, but, it sounds absolutely amazing. This is a really cool plugin. I would recommend this for anybody. This is one of these slept on plugins that I was just like, what do I need this for? And honestly, for guitars, bass, drums, this thing could be the difference between a good sound and an absolutely destroying sound. Just learn how to dial it in and you'll be right as rain. And from there, I'm just bouncing up to the very top, of course, where I'm going to go into the main sort of channel strip. You can either build this as a sort of plug-in chain with a preamp and an EQ with filtration, compression, and expansion. And I do it as the preamp first, then expansion, then compression. Then I would have the EQ and filtration last. But it's your call. These things are about $40 and there's a whole bunch of different versions of them. So I would recommend getting a couple different ones because certain ones work better with other instruments. In this case, I was messing with continuity. So if I ran everything as SSL 4000 Gs, does it sound better than if I use sort of a whole slew of different ones just up here at the top level? And the answer was it sounds better when you use all the same ones. So that might be a tip. I don't know. You'll have to experiment for yourself. But at this stage, the master stage, my next one, I'm going to be using a different set of channel strips to get a different sound. I think it's the N channel. Let's see if I've got it here. We'll go into Plugin Alliance. Yeah, there it is, the console N. This is a really cool one where it's like a hybrid kind of dealio. But that's exactly what I'm talking about right there. Here's one. Exact same thing. There's your high-low filtration. This is compression and gating and limiting right here. This is your preamp, or sorry, this is the preamp section here, and this is your EQ. And of course, it always has these extra little functions here with the gain staging, and this V gain and the THD. Basically, see that as like a focusing agent. It can widen and tighten your signal very awesomely. So this is a cool plugin, and I can't wait to try it out with a whole sort of like master mix thing. But the first one, I was like, go with the tried and true, and this one here, the SSL 4000G, is without a doubt the king of rock. So if you're looking for a rock one, this is the one I would get, and I'm pretty sure they make it with almost every single plugin company, right? And from there, I'm just outputting it now into stereo widening, right? I go into the stereo widener, and I compress it a lot. And now I'm EQing it again in mid-side. Notice this mid-side. I listen to it initially in stereo. I'm like, that doesn't sound that great. When I sort of make the manipulations, I turn off the link sort of function, and I turn on mid-side and start to EQ it in mid-side separately, and done. Now you can turn the link function off and mix them different left-right, but I wouldn't recommend it. But you do you. Maybe you're like the audio master. Who knows? And of course, this bottom one here is just, again, reverb. And notice I actually turned it down a little bit. And again, just high-low pass filtration, which is just cleaning up the sound. It just leaves the shimmering awesomeness of this. And again, you might want to sort of open this as its separate window like that, and then open this one so you get the effect, if you will. And here you can see this little sort of EQ function, and that's where I was basically dialing in as much as the EQ here while this is bypassed, right? And then, of course, turn this on and then adjust the cutoff until it sounds right. So crank this way up to like 20,000 and then start messing with this, be like, nah, and then start bringing it down and be like, okay, it sounds really good there, just a little bit too crispy, and then just start rolling off the top. This one's got like an insane number of actual curves. That's why I like it. And all it does is high-low pass filtration, so it's very transparent, very precise. This one is killer, $20. You can't go wrong, and you're going to do this all the time. Right, so that basically wraps up the whole sort of like, let's get going with the drums. And honestly, the most important part was the building of them and the sort of laying out of the sections. Learn how to create a region. See where it says I have a region here? You know, if I want to edit it, I hold down the shift button. I can go in here. You can use the region manager. This is an incredibly useful tool to actually learn how to use. It lets you navigate your song. And on top of that, just lets you sort of keep everything real. Trust me, once you start doing some basic ones, the 1.5 minute backing track will turn into a 6 minute backing track. And you'd be like, I want to have 2 or 3 different parts. And this really makes that a total possibility, because you don't have to expend so much gray matter, if you will, just trying to remember what you did. You've actually planned it out, and your mind will just instantly recall this information, be like, oh yeah, that's what I was doing. And boom, you're right off to the races, right? That part there, I can't stress enough. And the idea of just breaking things up into some sort of workflow. Okay, notice down here, I build the drums, and I would choose the drum sound and everything else, but I'm not doing anything else. I'm not making it big. I'm not focusing it, nothing. Just strictly the drum, you know, rhythms and stuff, and just the sound that I'm happy with as far as the stock sound. From there, me personally, I'm like, okay, needs a bit more tweaking. So I bring it up here and I do this. And I'm doing it in 2 different stages, because realistically speaking, I prefer doing this brow rising as its own thing rather than trying to do it up here. I found that doing it up here when I was doing it at the same time as this was just not the same. Don't ask me why. I have no idea. So I broke it up into 2 sections. And now you basically see me putting these 2 together as basically getting the rough drum sound, which isn't very rough. It sounds pretty badass at this point. But then, of course, to get it at full sort of like, you know, professional studio level, I got to go through just a few more steps. In this case, this synth here, the sub synth, and this other sort of, you know, EQ boosting I'm doing in the lows and the low mids, really, and in the highs. And of course, a bit of stereo widening and a little bit of, reverb, go miles and miles and miles. And then, of course, 99% of the work is happening right here in this channel strip. You notice here, these things are turned way down, minus 27 dB, minus 27 dB. This is 95% of my drum sound, which is why you see this is so involved, and there's this whole blue section down here, why that's so involved, because this is basically the drum section, and this last little bit here is just the icing on the cake. This makes it sound absolutely pro level, okay, by widening it out and tightening up the mechanics there. And of course, adding in a bit of reverb will basically add a nice little top end shimmer to the cymbals and the hi-hat and the toms and stuff like that, and just brighten up the drums overall without you having to go psycho, obviously, with this, because look at, I'm already cranking at 15K, almost 3 dB on the drums here. So I was like, if I go more, it's too much. It's too much. If I add another EQ on there, I'm like, I'm EQing an EQ. That doesn't make sense. So I was like, what else can I do? And that's when it dawned on me I could basically use this little EQ section with the reverb, and then just I had to make a few moves there at the very end. So on Sunday's lesson, I'm going to already have this piece built up and the template made up, and of course I'll have the keyboard section already laid out, because we're going to talk about that too in the next one. But I'm going to go through the process of rendering these out and stuff like that and let you hear each stage. So there'll be me doing a little bit of talking, and then you'll basically see me do a sped up version of building it and all the rest of that stuff, and then rendering it out, and then move to the next stage, and you'll hear each one of these ones. And I don't even touch this stuff anymore. Once you get it down with respect to the drums, it's done, right? And I'm not going to get too fancy here. It's going to be the same drum sound, just so you can be like, yeah, okay, that sounds killer, right? And then there it is. You'll be like, okay, that's not so bad, honestly. It's a couple stages where he just does a minimal amount of actual sort of tweaking to the sound. I found that once you start making these big, huge moves, right, to the sound, you're just asking for problems. You really are. So break it up. If you want to make the drums sound more, hammering and crushing like an anvil, you got to do that in one of these stages. Like, take the normal drum sound and just make it like it weighs 1,000 pounds. And then once you do that, take that raw clay and craft it one more time by widening it out, adding a bit of reverb and some strategic EQing, if you will, for lack of a better word, to really just drive it home. And that's really it. And this used to be 15 or 20 tracks. And over the last 6 years, I've got it boiled down to the ones that you see here. And honestly, I meant these top ones used to be about 10 or 15 tracks, and then I still had this bottom section. So this is, realistically speaking, all that has remained from the early drum tracks and the early drum template. And this new section I built up, just to replace a certain other piece that was at least 10 or 15 tracks. And then finally I was like, if I do it like this, I have the ultimate level of control over the mix, because I can add in how wide it is. I can add in how much top end and how soupy it sounds with reverb, and I can manipulate the reverb like you wouldn't believe, of course, adding EQ, mixing in mid-side. There's so many things you can do here at this stage. Add more effects like a phaser or chorusing to the reverb itself. Like the options are unlimited. And of course, last but not least, if you're going to do anything, you can skip over the widening, you can skip over this, you can skip over almost everything, and really work on your channel strip chops. And you'll see that happening basically in the video. And just, flavor to taste. This is how I like to do it. You'll do it your own way kind of situation. We'll talk about the order of operations and all that good stuff. But ultimately, you'll figure that part out too. That's the end of the video. Okay, so basically, build the drum track, the exoskeleton, the infrastructure, right, by dragging these MIDI structures onto the actual DAW grid, right? Then you can basically edit these things whenever you need to. If there's a serious problem here, if I select this, I can turn it on, right? I can just go right into the source material. And I'm like, oh, this one sound here, or whatever this one is, it's not doing anything for me. But this next one up here is, I can just select the entire sound and just grab it and drag it up. And now all of a sudden, that's the new sound, and I'm done. And I've corrected the problem with minimal sort of effort. You know what I mean? And that's why I would recommend this. And I used to glue them all together. Now I just leave them broken up. And of course, there's these other functions up here, and you can right click on them and basically get even more properties, right? Like there's settings up here kind of situation, but it has even more properties that you can manipulate. So obviously, keeping it in its raw form like this is the most sensible. And that's why later on I output them as an actual audio file using this rendering function, because I have the best of both worlds. Now I can just manipulate the audio, but down here, the source material, I have total control over. And that's really one of the most important things I've ever learned about mixing, is at one point in time, there should be a final line of defense where you're just like, if worse comes to worse, I can just go right here and just make changes as necessary. You're like, this one fill, it just doesn't work. Well, it's way easier to select this one and delete it and add a new fill that does work, where you can just sort of sit there and systematically go through dropping them in kind of situation till you're happy, than it is to try to change the entire drum track or do a cut in or some other crazy thing, which is just not going to work. I'll tell you that right now, which is why you see me doing this, right? So you have your construction stage. You have, in this case, sweetening stage number 1 for me. That basically fattens it up, makes it hit hard. Then I've got sweetening stage number 2 here. That's just make it work better with the bass guitar and just sort of add the appropriate amount of EQ globally to really just make it smack. And last but not least, I have this final arbiter set up here that go right to the master 2 out here, right through the compressor and through the EQ from this master drum out, and of course the widening and the reverb. So I hope that really helps. Honestly, if you set yours up relatively the same way, where you have this one track here, which is feeding up, obviously, when this is all done, all of these tracks are turned off, all of them, and never used again. It's all up here now. This information that used to be all down here, that's all here now. And I never have to go down to this drum thing again unless I absolutely have to, right? Which makes my life easier. Now I'm down to these 7 here with another 3. So 10 tracks. I went from, like, normally, I think the old one had about 30, and now I'm down to 10. And trust me, the most important one's this one. So if you took anything away and you start messing around with stuff and you're like, okay, I really need to make my drums sound really good, master this, whether you build this strip with just individual plugins with the preamp and the filters and all that stuff, or you get yourself a channel strip. And there are free ones too, of course, so there's no real excuse. There are ones that you can get on trial basis before you buy them, and really they are pretty inexpensive. So 30 or 40 bucks goes a very, very, very long way, and you'll be well off to the races. And again, there is one other thing you'll notice on every single one of these master tracks here. This is just an extra tidbit. I use the same channel strip up here at this, all these blue tracks. They all use this SSL 4000. I use them in other places too, of course. But in this case, that's a huge one. When you get up here later on, you might want to add different ones, right? I have a huge amount of them. Like I might want to be like, okay, I want to use this Focusrite one, which is really killer too. This is a totally different kind of vibe, but another sort of channel strip that was used in the 70s with a lot of really famous sort of classic rock bands. It's just a really sick strip. So that's my point. All of these would be Focusrite. If it was another channel strip, then it would be all of those ones too. And I have a whack of them, right? Obviously I have this AMEC 9009. This is probably one of the best ones you can buy, but it's expensive as hell. So I'll leave it up there to you. But you have those ones. I've got the SSL here. I've got Neve ones, of course. They're over here like that. This 80 channel, the 69 channel, the 50 channel. Some of them sound better on keyboards. Some of them sound better on drums or vocals, bass guitar. That's why having them. And plus, this one came with these single bus channel ones like you would have on an actual SSL board, which is why I got them. And they basically emulate whatever the channel strip is. So if this is a Neve, this is like a Neve fader. If this is a, whatever it is, the 69, it's some other board, who knows what it is. I don't even actually keep up with them because honestly, they all have their own characteristics, but I just started collecting them over a long period of time, and it's one of the single-handedly most important plugins you can get. All the other stuff is fluff. This one here is essential. The most essential ones are this one here, and obviously the EQ. Okay, like the really expensive ones, like this one here. This Kirchhoff or whatever it is. Look at the crazy EQ curve on my electric guitar. Okay, so that just kind of puts it in there. And but having something like this is absolutely essential, right? All the rest of this stuff, this transient shaper, it's useful, but you don't need it. This limiter you could do with a compressor. This is really awesome on guitars, but just was something I kind of tripped across. A good sort of compressor that basically does various frequency ranges. That's one of those things I'd have. Another good all-purpose compressor like an 1176 or something is also very useful. But the channel strip in this here, honestly, with the stock plugins from almost any sort of DAW, you know what I mean? You can just drop them in there. You just go up here to the Coco stuff. They have all of these ones. There's a compressor and the delay, the EQ, there's a gate, limiter, pitch shifter, there's surround sound stuff, reverb, vocoder, there's a dynamic compressor, and more. They have so much more. There's all the JS ones too. This all comes stock with the actual software. So these are also, there's distortion, as I said, a 4-band splitter, you have EQs, there's just so much stuff going on here. It's ridiculous. You don't need all this extra stuff. I just want to stress that. But having a really good channel strip and having a super kick-ass EQ like the Kirchhoff or Fab Filter or anything like that is going to be an absolute must. So if you're going to spend money on anything, get those two first, ones that you like. Okay, you can't go wrong with the 4000G, but that's not the only one. And so on and so forth, right? And then start to branch out from there, getting other ones, and then just choose, in my opinion, choose like one group. In my case, I use Plugin Alliance and just get most of their plugins. As you can see, I basically have almost all of them. I have a ton of them. So, well, at least for mixing and stuff like that, they have a whole bunch of instruments and stuff. And there it is, right? It makes sense and honestly keeps your life simple. So in the next one, we'll go through the step-by-step process. You'll see me build the drum track, and then we'll listen to the actual audio examples, and then we'll talk a little about SATB in accordance to the backing track chord sequence. And then, of course, we're going to start talking and laying down the chord sequence at the same time, and I want to show you how I basically go about doing that, layering the bass with the two chords and stuff like that. Again, this will be an eye-opener because it really makes your life so much easier. I'm going to do it with 2 sets of chords, but you could do one set where it's the keyboards and another where you do the second set of chords with your guitar. I know, madness. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate every single one of you. I wish you all the best on your recording journey. Don't be afraid. Just jump in there with both feet and just start working it out. Trust me, within a couple weeks, you'll be pretty confident and you'll be making music in no time. We'll see you in the next one.